This is episode 335 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing.
And I'm Wally Drangmeister.
I'm president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. Well, Wally, the first and foremost news of the past week is Joe Biden, President Biden's very aggressive, legally questionable vaccine mandate executive order, which is really a couple of executive orders dealing with federal employees, federal contractors, and even private sector businesses and their employees in excess of 100 people. And the Biden administration is trying very hard to push Americans to get vaccinated. We'll see if it's constitutional, but I wanted to get your initial thoughts on that, Wally.
Well, it is certainly an aggressive use of executive power. And, you know, it's interesting in our form of government, to your question, is it constitutional? Things happen and then they're deemed to be constitutional or not, but it's not always very quickly. And sometimes that is basically what's desired from the executive branch. So it is very aggressive. It's interesting. It is not being well received among those that are advocates of freedom and due process and personal choice, personal responsibility, and it's being widely celebrated amongst others. You know, the thing about it is that this is just from a high level political point of view, this is the president's huge kind of political action on an item. The one being with the approach and how the exit from Afghanistan went, and I think politically, you know, he's at much peril with this. You know, there's a lot of people that will not be very happy with this. The unions representing the federal employees, for one. So, you know, we've seen a lot of talk about what's appropriate and what's legal to do from an employer point of view. And when you are the federal government, you're a big employer, so that's certainly going to impact a lot of things. And then, yeah, any business 100 or more, that takes into account a huge swath of the private sector.
Yeah, and we've been considering and looking at this issue from a lot of different angles. And one of the things that really jumps out is in terms of the vaccine, African Americans and Hispanics have much lower rates of uptake than do whites, and especially Asians. Asians have been by far and away, according to this data from the Kaiser Family Foundation, 68% of Asians, this is, I believe, 9/7/2021, so pretty recent data. 52% of whites, 48% of Hispanics, and 43% of blacks. Now, when the Biden administration talks about, you know, racial issues, they use the term equity and disparate impact, and those are terms that mean you should have equal outcomes regardless of the justification for the policy. And if you have a bunch of Black people or Hispanic people losing federal jobs and even paychecks in the private sector, that is going to cause some real issues. Now, all of this is going to wind its way through both the executive order promulgation process and the courts, and you may have judges put a stay on enforcement. So there's a lot of different factors in how this all proceeds. But if it comes to pass, that could be a real issue for the Biden administration. A few other factors. One is the dog that's not barking, and I think this is an interesting factor. You know, you have millions, I don't know about hundreds of millions, but close to, a very large number of Americans that are on some form of government benefits, federal benefits, welfare programs, unemployment benefits, and even Social Security and Medicare. And if you're really going to target the most vulnerable people to coronavirus, then Medicare and Medicaid as well as Social Security could be used to push the vaccine. At least I think you have a firmer justification legally for doing that kind of thing because these are people accepting government benefits. It's interesting that those folks are nowhere to be found. You have to have a job, you have to be working and productive in order for this to impact you, which is a fascinating kind of dichotomy. And lastly, what about the people who have already been affected by COVID-19? If you've had it, abundant numbers of studies have shown that you are really protected from future COVID-19 infections. Why not do some kind of tests to give people who have already had the virus a pass on vaccination? It seems very straightforward and simple. But these are the questions that I think a rational person asks. I don't know that these policies, like so much of what we've seen during the COVID era, have any real bearing on the science or the logic in terms of their implementation.
Yeah, and then the other thing is it's one of those things. There are likely many, many, many chapters left in the COVID saga in the United States of America and the world, and there are political decisions that are being made today that are being made because they're not being made necessarily with science, and there's in a lot of cases not science that's in a position that can justify doing nothing or justify doing everything. So they very much are judgment calls, and then as more and more information comes out, we're going to have to see how history will take a bright look at what happens in this. And an example is as we start to talk about vaccinating children, what's going to happen with that. Children in general have fared very, very well with the COVID to this point. And there have been quite a few, it's one of those, believe me, Paul, I am not an anti-vaxxer. I have my 2 vaccine card right over here in my desk drawer. So I have it. But, even I'm like, I think that was a good thing, but there are a lot of things that could happen long term, and we just don't know what's going to happen. But these policies that are being put forward certainly don't, speak of the concept of using freedom and personal responsibility. It is very much a top-down. It also doesn't speak to the concept of the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. It's like, no, do this, and we know there's some downsides, but we don't care, and it's illegal to talk about them, and go forward. So we will see, and we've not seen the last variant of COVID. It's out there in the world enough that based on everything I've read about virology and the mathematics and the way viruses mutate, there literally will be, for all practical purposes, infinite variations of the virus going forward. So will the vaccine that we've taken, 2 doses of, and some places are starting to go to 3, will that be a uniformly good thing as things go forward? Being a person who's taken the vaccine, I certainly hope so. But there's nothing that, there are no guarantees. And man, just when we think things are good, what do we have this summer, Paul? Maybe the 6 weeks of normal, and then you know what I mean. So, when are we going to get back to where things start to feel normal again? In some cases, they are. Look at college football games. People are there in thousands, but there's other things.
NFL games as well.
NFL, but as we look at going to work, that's certainly far from normal, and it doesn't look like it will be quote unquote normal anytime soon.
And of course, AOC and her high glamour pals at the Met last night also seemed pretty normal. They seem to be enjoying themselves quite nicely with no masks and whatnot. Of course, the whole mask hypocrisy has been covered and recovered, whether it's Deb Haaland, Barack Obama, or numerous other politicians have pushing masks on the rest of us, not so much when it comes to their own enjoyment. But the governor's order comes up for renewal, and could be today, could be tomorrow, but September 15th is when it expires. This is the masks indoors mandate imposed by Governor Lujan Grisham. Rio Grande Foundation did an informal, unscientific poll on Twitter. There's still time to weigh in. Do you think she will extend the order, let the order expire, or make it worse somehow? Extend the order has out of 100 votes, so relatively popular for a New Mexico specific issue on Twitter. Extend the order, 33%. Let the order expire, 6%. Make it worse somehow, 61%. Myself, I voted for extend the order. I don't think she has a incentive at this point in the ball game to make it any worse, but you never know. I certainly think that her incentive structure as we head into next year is to not impose more anti-business mandates and try to make life more difficult for them. And to her credit, and we've given her credit for this, the vaccine push, the effort to get more arms vaccinated seems to be paying off a bit. New Mexico has suffered, but not nearly as badly as some other states in terms of deaths in this latest wave of COVID-19. But we shall see what the governor has in store for us when she renews or somehow lets the order expire, which I think is pretty much laughable at this point.
Well, yeah. Those 6% people, go ahead and send me your phone number, and I'll sell you some swampland in Florida. But no, as we say, it could happen. I think it'll be extended. I'm with you. I think that's the most likely, and then we will see what happens this fall. It looks like in New Mexico, as in much of the country, that the Delta variant, we're starting to level out at the top. There's always a little bit of a gap in the data. First of all, they don't post it every day, but it is. If you look at the 7-day averages, it looks like it's leveling out. May it come back down? We're not sure. And then what's going to be either the next variant or what will the winter season bring? Paul, I sound like the cliffhanger on a soap opera. You know what I mean? It's like these are the days of our lives. There's a lot of questions and not a lot of answers going forward as to what's going to happen. But I do think that, yes, I think that New Mexico suffered so much economically, and again, not New Mexico, not the state. We've got oil and gas down there sending in the checks with reckless abandon, but unemployment's still very high. Small business failure is very high, and as unemployment benefits are reduced at the federal level, there are limits to them at the state level. There's a whole lot of things. If we don't get the economy running better and more people working, we were going to be set up for really big problems in the not too distant future.
Yeah. Now, in terms of issues specifically this fall electorally, I will just remind everybody that we have an election, a very important election, I might add, especially here in the Albuquerque area, but there are big issues on the ballot in many parts of our state, in addition to the mayor's race, city council races, school board races, all of which are of great import. We in the city of Albuquerque are voting on a proposed United Soccer Stadium. Don't let them fool you. It is a soccer stadium that's on the ballot, even though they try to broaden the terms into something more about an performing arts center and this, that, and the other. It's a soccer stadium, folks. Let's just drop the pretenses. So our past guest, a two-time Tipping Point, New Mexico guest, Charles Sullivan, wrote a piece in the Albuquerque Journal that was published this week. And I wanted to post some highlights and highlight some of what he wrote in this podcast. One is he asks about a contract between the United soccer team and the city of Albuquerque, binding the team to anything in terms of the city. This to say it's ass backwards would be a bit of an understatement. You don't vote on we're going to spend $50 million of tax money to build something and then go back and ask the team for some kind of money to assist in the project. You get that lined up both for political as well as policy reasons ahead of time, because once the voters say yes, if they say yes, what incentive are the United going to have to go ahead and put up more money? So Sullivan makes that point. He says also the proposed bond question is open. To say it's open-ended is an understatement. We don't know how much the land is going to cost because we don't know where the stadium is going to be put. And the stadium has a projected quote-unquote bare bones cost of $50 million. What will the ultimate cost of this project be? And we know big projects have lots of cost overruns, but this one, unlike even other stadium projects, which usually do have millions of dollars of cost overruns, is likely to have additional overruns, both because of the situation with the pandemic, inflation in general, but we also have too many open-ended questions relating to this particular project. And then he cites the track record of minor league sports teams. Of course, most people fixate, and rightly so, on the Isotopes and before them the Albuquerque Dukes, but we have had a number of different sports teams around our city, the Gladiators, and there was Wildcats, arena football, and
a host of semi-pro and
yeah,
minor league basketball, over the years. So
yeah, and the United are very much in danger of missing out on their playoffs. They've still drawn very well, which I think points to they do have a entertaining product. At least people in Albuquerque seem to like it. And they play in a very good location, which is Isotopes Park. And I don't just mean the stadium. I think the stadium is suboptimal for soccer. It's designed for baseball, not soccer. But the location is the best available. And again, it just points to why can't the Lobos football stadium, which is used 8 or so, 5 or 6 even times a year, throw in the New Mexico Bowl and maybe get up to 8 times a year. That seems like an ideal option. The Lobos, UNM also have a soccer only stadium in the same general area. It just seems there's a abject lack of creativity. But when you think you can get a brand spanking new stadium for free at taxpayer expense, your incentive to be creative and come up with an innovative solution is lacking. So I would say you just turn it down, and I think the soccer team will either stay in Isotopes Park or find a better place to play around our city.
Yeah, well, a couple of points is even though Isotopes Park is not ideal for soccer, it is a fantastic park. The concourse and the food options, parking is great. You have a fantastic view of the mountains, and one of the dangers is that people are going to say, this new soccer stadium isn't as nice from a fan point of view as even the when I used to watch soccer at Isotope Stadium. That's certainly something I think is of major concern. And again, the total fan experience is pretty darn high at Isotopes Park. Easy to get into, in a fantastic location. The other thing is compare, a publicly financed stadium with. Let's just say that I'm a private real estate developer and I'm going to build a $50 million stadium for a hypothetical soccer club. I'm certainly going to get a relatively long-term contract with them for money to do that. In the case of the city doesn't even necessarily have a contract for them to stay there and get it free of charge. There's not even a commitment at that level. So it's not only, again, financially Paul, nothing's better than nothing's more economical for an individual than spending other people's money. That's absolutely the case in any stadium, much less for New Mexico United. But yeah, to not get a commitment that hey, you have to, as long as this league's in play, you can't move to you can't move the franchise to another city for X number of years. It would seem like that would be a bare
That
minimum
would
price
be,
to pay.
yeah.
I mean, that's pretty weak sauce when it comes to what you would have to do to get a $50 million stadium. But we'll see if that sort of thing goes on or doesn't.
Yeah, you can't build a stadium and then suddenly attendance dries up because nobody wants to go downtown with all the crime and the bums, and then 3, 5, whatever years in, could be sooner than that, they say, all right, we're out of here. That would be really terrible.
Yeah, that would be adding the worst of insult to injury from a fiscal and a city point of view. So,
Yeah. On August 1st, here locally, again in Albuquerque, the plastic bag ban took effect once again. And somebody who, suffice it to say, we don't necessarily agree with ever, Jolene Gutierrez Kruger. She is one of the opinion columnists at the Albuquerque Journal that sometimes writes heartwarming fluff pieces, other times writes incomprehensible mush from the general left perspective. She wrote a reasonably interesting piece about the local plastic bag ban, and we've got one going into effect next January, or this coming January, I should say, down in Las Cruces. Santa Fe's had a ban for a long time, and other cities undoubtedly will. I believe Los Alamos has had one as well. So this is a policy that our unfortunately progressive politicians love to impose on people, and normally don't find much of interest to read from Miss Gutierrez Kruger. But she does ask in this piece some very good questions about the way, at least in Albuquerque, that bag ban has worked. And Wally, when you go shopping here for groceries, you often get these thicker, heavier duty feeling bags from, at least we get them from the local Walmart. We have 5 people to shop for, not so many in the Drangmeister household, as well as Target has those kinds of bags. And these are clearly multiple times more resource intensive than those skinny plastic bags. I'm assuming you've had the same experience.
Well, yes, and also, Paul, I do shop at Walmart in person on occasion, but I've also pretty regularly used Walmart's delivery service, and the groceries used to come in the little thin bags. The people delivering the groceries would carry those up. Now they come in the thick bags. So.
Yeah.
Yes, so we're in a pretty weird place right now, and the basic fact of the matter is that why aren't they going to paper? Wonderful paper. Well, papers. If I were delivering groceries, I would love to use plastic bags because you can carry 3 or 4 of them in each hand, depending on how much stuff's in there and how heavy it is, and. Paul, there has to be a price differential. Otherwise, believe me, the Walmarts and Targets of the world would have gone to paper without blinking an eye.
Yeah.
And so we have this poorly thought through regulation that is, it sure felt good when we passed it, but we've seen but we've had a lot of problems with it. And then, again, kind of to tie COVID and plastic bags, why was the plastic bag ban eliminated was during COVID, there was some concern that using these reusable bags would create more of a COVID-19, more of a SARS-CoV-2 virus transmission risk. And we could get there still. So, there are still grocery services out there. And if things get really bad and you're immune compromised or whatever, that could still be a good service for you. What are people supposed to do? It's one of those, you can't necessarily effectively deliver groceries without some sort of container, whether it be a box or a bag or whatever. You're not going to carry armfuls of stuff and dump them on the front porch.
Yeah. Now, Gutierrez Kruger notes that, of course, the thicker bags are made with more plastic than the thin ones. According to environmental groups that she talked to, the thicker bags take longer to decompose and introduce even more toxic chemicals into the environment than the thin ones. Not shocking there. There's no plan to, the idea of outright banning those bags as well has been brought forth, but there's no plans at the city to do that, which would be foolish as well, because then there'll be some other reaction. Now, she writes here in this column, the thicker bags are no substitute for the thinner bags, which were handy as bathroom wasteback liners, kitty litter disposal, and dog poop collecting. Opponents of bag bans, she doesn't mention Rio Grande Foundation because that would be too nice. She just says they say consumers are now buying small bags for those tasks, thus rendering bag bans senseless since they ultimately bring more plastic into the environment. And plastic bags are not acceptable under the city's recycling program. How does any of this make sense? Well, I agree with her, of course, in this regard. Just this weekend, I went during, I live on the west side, so Rio Rancho's not far away, and helped myself to a large number of plastic bags from the Walmart in Rio Rancho. And thank you, Rio Rancho, for standing up for sanity and freedom. You're a beacon to the rest of us in New Mexico of what sane, basic public policy looks like. Now, the reason I can't stand Kruger Gutierrez is because she ultimately can't get beyond her own left-wing politics. And she concludes with, bagging these bags may be a small effort, but it's a start, and it's something we can all do with relative ease and low cost, one plastic bag at a time. So she refuses to actually come to the policy understanding that, government just doesn't do a good job at this. They really don't make effective public policy. The plastic bags are wasteful. The plastic thick bags are wasteful and unnecessary. Just re-legalize the thinner bags and move forward. That would be, too unacceptable to her ilk. So anyway, we will move on from there. And Wally, I know you and I have enjoyed or not enjoyed talking about the electricity situation for some time.
And Paul, can I share our kind of personal conversation we've had?
Sure.
The issue is, and Paul asked me many months ago whether he thought it would be a good idea to have a personal generator at the guessing household. And so I will go on record as saying, Paul, I don't think the time for generators is here yet on a personal level. But you know what? If I lived in California, I think it would my mind would be changed. And who knows what New Mexico is going to do? Because speaking of government policy, that's basically creating unintended consequences, on steroids. Electric policy right now is crazy. And, you sent me an article that I was very appreciative of, by the way, just about how much personal generator sales, home generator sales have grown. And Paul, guess what? Those generators don't run on love, and they don't run on wind, and they certainly don't run on solar. They run on gasoline and diesel and propane. So, it's one of those that it could be the plastic bag ban times, a million from a environmental impact point of view.
Yeah. And the article actually one of the articles I sent you, I'm sure, dealt with the fact that California, and of course today we'd be remiss if we didn't note that Gavin Newsom is facing a recall election today in California. We'll see what happens. So far, the polls have kind of moved in his direction, but strange things could happen, I'm sure. California is planning to build 5 new natural gas plants in order to avoid blackouts. Each of those plants will cost $171.5 million. And these so-called temporary natural gas plants will help make sure that California has enough electricity to continue without the blackout situation. worsening in that particular state. Now, they've been mothballing not just natural gas plants, but nuclear plants, which is the height
Yeah.
of stupidity in California.
And coal plants have long
Well, right,
since
right.
been gone in California and increasingly being closed across the entire United
Yeah,
States.
and
So,
California has, in many ways, New Mexico. We're reflecting their policies, but PNM, as we've talked about previously on this podcast, PNM has expressed significant concern about the future of the electrical grid in New Mexico and blackouts and brownouts when they close San Juan Generating Station under the governor's Energy Transition Act, which is, you know, California policy brought to New Mexico. It's very, very similar. Now, the question is, and I think, Wally, the big thing that we're all going to be looking at with bated breath as well, PNM is saying we don't have the capacity to replace San Juan Generating Station by June 2022. Do you think, maybe a Twitter poll if the future is in the midst here, but will the governor somehow, in an election year, I might add, where moving into the summer, brownouts and blackouts would be especially problematic as as the fall of November 2022 looms, you think she'll just give the arbitrary blessing to San Juan Generating Station to continue moving forward to at least get her through this next summer?
I would say that would be a distinct possibility because New Mexico. One thing you have to give PNM is their electric service has been highly reliable, both on a massive wholesale system-wide level and including down to the neighborhood level. They make to where there's smaller and smaller numbers of houses that are on any given set of equipment. So when something fails, fewer and fewer people are impacted. Mm-hmm. And so for us to go to a California sort of brownout and blackout thing, particularly for lack of generation, I think that that could be really, the sort of thing that could cause a seated elected official to not be seated at the next election. So I think there's a decent chance of that. Also there's the Enchant Energy is looking at maintaining San Juan Generating Station by adding carbon capture, and so maybe there's a deal that can be cut with PNM and them to basically during this quote transition. And Paul, it's called the Energy Transition Act. It's one of those from the beginning. They even the numbers that PNM provided in their analysis said that we're going to need natural gas for a long period of time. But the commission has been very hesitant to grant anything other than wind, solar, and batteries. And then with not even those being able to be brought on, and let's say COVID was the cause of that, it's like fine, it is beyond their control. We still need electricity, and so do you want to turn off a perfectly good power plant from an electric point of view, albeit even if it has some environmental challenges in the short term, for nothing? And I think the answer to that, man, if I'm a New Mexican, I think the answer is no, because electricity and reliable electricity isn't just nice to have. You figure how many people that are on oxygen at home, and a lot of people who aren't involved with an older person or someone who needs oxygen. It used to be tanks only. Well, now there's oxygen generators that are powered by electricity. Now they have battery backup for a while, but they don't last days and days and days. And so the issues that happen from unreliable electricity are profound. So yeah, I would just say that I think maybe there might be some renewed interest in flexibility and renewed interest in the thing that's the transition part of the Energy Transition Act in the coming couple of years. And I certainly hope that's the case. Otherwise, Paul, we better get our personal generators and we better get them going. So,
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's going to be fascinating issue to watch unfold. Certainly during the upcoming legislative session, the governor will push other aspects of her green agenda, but I suspect that when push comes to shove, blackouts and brownouts will not be something she's willing to tolerate, especially in an election year. Lastly, just highlighting a few things. Our partner in education reform, kind of a group within the Rio Grande Foundation, Opportunities for All Kids New Mexico, oaknm.org, is surveying public school candidates across the state of New Mexico on issues from whether masks should be required in the classroom to whether to split APS, so that's an APS specific issue, whether critical race theory should be taught in the classroom, and numerous other important issues. Those surveys are being collected right now. So if you're a candidate for school board, please respond if you haven't responded already. If you have a district, if you have candidates that you think should make their opinions heard, we are using this information and we're going to be publicizing it to the best extent possible publicly as early voting kicks off this fall. So that's oaknm.org, and you can look for the school board surveys on that site. Also, on September the 20th, Monday the 20th, we are hosting an event with education policy expert and past, I believe, two-time guest on Tipping Point, New Mexico, Corey DeAngelis. This has been an incredible year for school choice, not so much in New Mexico, but Rio Grande Foundation and some other organizations are definitely pushing for increased school choice. Of course, getting out and voting and making sure that reform-minded candidates are voted on and succeed in the upcoming election is a critical part of that. But of course, so is electing a more school choice friendly legislature that's less beholden to the unions, as well as a governor that is not beholden to the unions. Those are all critical factors. But Corey DeAngelis has been a tireless and innovative worker on education reform issues, school choice. Monday, September 20th at the Albuquerque Museum. That is an evening event. It will be getting started around 6 p.m. And folks can go on to the Rio Grande Foundation's website and find out more. And we are partnering with the Americans for Prosperity chapter here in New Mexico on that particular issue. So a lot going on these days, and we're definitely inundated with very important policy issues as we head into this fall, and a very important election season that's going to, I think, shape what happens in New Mexico in the legislative session, as well as the next election and beyond. So stay tuned, folks. It's going to be an interesting ride. So thanks for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointnm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube channel. Subscribe to this show at Apple, Stitcher, or have your Google Home play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.